Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines. President's royalty and pilgrims joined 250,000 mourners in St. Peter's Square to honour Pope Francis at his funeral. After a solemn mass, his casket was taken through Rome with his tomb simply inscribed Franciscus. President Trump and Zelensky met in Rome ahead of Pope Francis's funeral to revive Ukraine's ceasefire talks. It was their first face-to-face since their Oval Office shouting match, with both sides calling it a historic moment. India and Pakistan exchanged fire for a second day after a deadly attack on tourists in Kashmir killed 26. India accused Pakistani troops of unprovoked firing along the de facto border. A massive blast at Iran's Bandar Abbas port kills 4 and injures over 500 people, likely caused by exploding chemicals. The incident coincides with Iran-US nuclear talks, but officials see no immediate connection. Hamas offers a multi-year truce with Israel but refuses to disarm, seeking support in Cairo talks. The group proposes a 5 to 7 year ceasefire deal in exchange for a Gaza reconstruction, prisoner exchanges and hostage deals. Top Iranian and US negotiators begin a new round of indirect talks in Oman to curb Tehran's nuclear program. Trump's expressed confidence in striking a deal to block Iran's path to a nuclear bomb. Turkey has detained more than 47 Istanbul officials in a widening crackdown targeting jailed Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu, Erdogan's main rival. İmamoğlu's arrest has sparked mass protests, economic turmoil and accusations of judicial abuse. Virginia Giuffre, one of Jeffrey Epstein's most prominent accusers, has died by suicide at 41 in Australia. Her family confirmed her death in a statement released on Friday. You join us in our ongoing coverage of the situation in Kashmir, where tensions are currently escalating sharply between India and Pakistan after a deadly attack on tourists in the region left 26 civilians dead. For a second straight day, Indian and Pakistani troops exchanged gunfire across the de facto border. India accuses Pakistan of carrying out the attack, identifying 2 Pakistani nationals among the suspects. In a strong retaliatory move, India has suspended the decades-old Indus Water Treaty, with officials vowing to halt all water flow to Pakistan. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif has called for a neutral international investigation, rejecting direct blame. Let's take a listen in to what the Pakistani Prime Minister had to say.
Pakistan is open to participate in any neutral, transparent and credible investigation. Our valiant armed forces remain fully capable and prepared to defend the country's sovereignty and its territorial integrity against any misadventure, as clearly demonstrated by its measured yet resolute response to India's reckless incursion in February 2019.
In related news regarding the ordeal, US President Donald Trump, reacting to the developments, said tensions between India and Pakistan have existed for a long time and expressed confidence that they will resolve the situation. Let's take a listen to what US President Donald Trump had to say.
I'm very close to India and I'm very close to Pakistan, as you know. They've had that fight for 1,000 years in Kashmir. Kashmir's been going on for 1,000 years, probably longer than that. And it was a bad one yesterday. That was a bad.
We are joined by Major General P.K. Seagal, senior defence expert located in New Delhi, to discuss this further. Thank you very much, General, for joining us. As we know, India has accused Pakistan of direct involvement in these attacks on the region of Jammu and Kashmir, killing 26 tourists. They have cited 2 Pakistani nationals as among the suspects. How credible and conclusive is the evidence that India has presented so far?
The audio is gone.
Apologies, we seem to have some audio issues there. Major General, my question is, India has obviously accused Pakistan of direct involvement through these 2 Pakistani nationals who are said to be among the suspects. How credible and conclusive is the evidence that India has presented so far?
India need not present any evidence to Pakistan because Pakistan would deny it. If you recall, when they carried out the Mumbai attack, Pakistan was given 35 dossiers, but they disregarded each one of them, said that they don't have enough evidence. Now that Rana has been extradited, Pakistan is already on the back foot by saying, we don't bother about Rana, he's a Canadian citizen, we got nothing to do with him. And he's not even renewed his documents for the last 20 years. They are forgetting the fact that Rana was an army officer in the Pakistan army for 7 years. He was a very close ally of his side. He was a very close ally of the Pakistani ISI and the Pakistani dispensation besides the Pakistani army. Yes. Thereafter, when the attack took place on Pathankot, after Prime Minister Modi met Nawaz Sharif at his residence on his way back from Afghanistan, Pakistan till date denies the fact that they were involved in the attack on Pakistan, on Pathankot. When Uri incident took place where 19 of our Jawans were killed, Pakistan continues to say that we had nothing to do with it. It was the homegrown terror of yours that did this. When 40 of our CRPF Jawans were killed in Pulwama, Pakistan again said that they have nothing to do with it, despite the fact that LET Chief Hafiz Saeed distributed sweets and accepted the fact that they've done it. That notwithstanding, Pakistan kept denying it. If you remember, when the Kargil war took place, Pakistan did not even accept dead bodies of 400 to 500 of their soldiers, saying that they are not Pakistanis. Even when Kasab was caught after the Mumbai attack alive, they refused to accept that he's a Pakistani citizen. So Pakistan has always been in a denial mode. The signatures, digital signatures and digital footprints lead back to a control room in Karachi. This operation was planned over a period of 2 months. Pakistani establishment, ISI, Pakistan Army and the Atankwadis were all part and parcel of this mission.
Yes.
They carried out an attack on India's soul. Our Prime Minister has gone on record to say that India's soul has been attacked. India has always been proud of its unity in diversity. They handpicked individuals who were Hindus. They checked their identification documents, told some of them to strip to confirm whether they were actually Hindus or Muslims. And they also told them to recite Kalima. And they shot them in the head in a most diabolical and most horrendous manner. The very fact that the entire world has condemned this incident, UN Security Council has condemned this incident despite the fact that China wields a veto power. Even China has not decided to support Pakistan on this. Reality has stood with India. Pakistan has absolutely got no support from anywhere. All the 60 or 65 Muslim countries and Arab countries, none have come forward to support Pakistan. Not many prime ministers and presidents across the world have spoken to Prime Minister Modi and said, whatever you will decide to do, we are with you. Pakistan wanted to divide India, particularly bring in a communal division between Hindus and Muslims. The right reverse happened. India stood totally united. All the political parties for the first time in the last 10 years have told the Prime Minister loud and clear that whatever action you take, we will support it. They thought in the valley there will be a huge division, and once again ethnic cleansing of the Hindus, but the right reverse took place. There's huge amount of anger in Jammu and Kashmir because what they've done is they've actually hit the lifeline of Kashmir. Tourism is the lifeline. The quality of life of people in Kashmir has risen enormously because of the huge influx of tourism. And even the political parties in Kashmir, for the first time ever, including Mehbooba Mufti, Mirwais, and Sajid, who have been known to pass anti-Indian statements, stood with India and have condemned Pakistan in totality. They've also gone on record to say that all those who've been assisting Pakistan, whether in the form of providing them the logistics support or providing them guide or carrying out reconnaissance on their behalf and or giving them food, etc., the locals are aware of who the people are. And sooner than later, they will inform the security forces about these individuals. And as far as if that happens, that's the grand end of terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir. No terrorism anywhere in the world can survive without local support. And local support seems to be disappearing. Pakistan did not anticipate that this is going to be the type of reaction of India. This is going to be the reaction Jammu and Kashmir. This is going to be the reaction of the world at large. And today, our Prime Minister has spoken to about 19 Prime Ministers and Presidents, indicating to them what we intend doing. If you recall, before the 1971 war, Mrs. Gandhi went on a tour of several countries to trying for shaping the international environment in India's favor. Now we did not have to go anywhere.
Yes.
20 heads of ambassadors were briefed first time, and then 45 ambassadors were briefed again by our external affairs minister. The government is decisive, the government is clear thinking, the government is visionary, government is matured, and we have one of the finest external affairs minister. I'm very certain whatever action the government of India decides to take will be a very matured decision, and Pakistan has been told in no uncertain terms that they will use all economic, diplomatic and political tools that are available to us,
yes,
which includes the held in abeyance of the Treaty of Indus Water Treaty. Though we have not stopped the water, nor are we in a position to stop the water for the next 10 to 15 years. Till such time we create dams, we create reservoirs, we divert the rivers and we create canals, etc. You cannot stop 135 billion acre feet of water to be flowing into Pakistan. But we showed them our intent of doing so. And as far as the defense minister is concerned, defense minister has gone on record to say,
yes,
the punishment that is going to meet to you this time will be far severer than what we did after the attack on Pulwama, that Balakot strike, and after the surgical strike. Pakistan is absolutely on the back foot. They have no idea whatsoever whether we are going to hit the terrorists, we are going to hit the terrorist training installations or their headquarters, or we are going to hit the Pakistani army, the Air Force, or even the Navy.
yes.
There is absolute worry in Pakistan. They are completely and totally on the back foot. They are already meeting, the Pakistani Foreign Affairs is holding meetings with the Chinese ambassador. Their ministers have gone down to various countries, virtually begging them for assistance and support against India.
Yes.
But unfortunately for Pakistan, no country will come forward. Even if you see Chinese reaction, first 24 hours China did not react. But
yes.
after
Major General Seagal, thank you very much for joining us and for your insight. We have to move on, sadly. Let's move over to Europe now, where US President Donald Trump has criticized Russian President Vladimir Putin for attacks on civilian areas of Ukraine in recent days and said that maybe Putin doesn't want to stop the war. In a post on Truth Social, Trump also said that maybe Putin has to be dealt with differently through banking or secondary sanctions. This comes after Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met briefly on the sidelines of Pope Francis's funeral before it started. This was their first meeting since the tense Oval Office talk in February this year. White House Communications Director Stephen Chung called the meeting a very productive discussion. The two were set to meet again. However, the second meeting did not take place due to busy schedules, according to the Ukrainian leader's office. Zelensky said on social media platform X that he discussed a possible unconditional ceasefire with Russia at the meeting with Trump. Meanwhile, Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin for 3 hours in Moscow on Friday to discuss the US plan to end the war. In Ukraine, Trump had previously said that the two sides were very close to making a deal. On the other hand, Putin had told US envoy Steve Witkoff at the meeting that Russia is ready to resume negotiations with Ukraine without any preconditions. Meanwhile, the Russian army claims that it has fully liberated the border Kursk region from Ukrainian control with the help of North Korean soldiers. Russian Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov said that the North Korean soldiers provided significant assistance in defeating the group of Ukrainian armed forces. However, the Ukrainian army has denied Moscow's claim to have driven Kyiv's forces out of the Kursk, saying that fighting in the western Russian region bordering Ukraine was still ongoing. Let's take a look at what the Russia's leaders had to say.
Сегодня освобожден от украинских подразделений последний населенный пункт на территории Курской области, село Горналь. Хочу отметить участие в освобождении приграничных районов Курской области военнослужащих Корейской Народно-Демократической Республики.
Авантюра киевского режима полностью провалилась. Полный разгром противника в Курском приграничье создает условия для дальнейших успешных действий наших войск и на других важнейших участках фронта, приближает разгром неонацистского режима.
We are joined by Professor Dr. Veselin Ivan Papovsky, Professor and Vice Dean at the Jindal Global Law School located in New Delhi, to discuss this further. Professor Papovsky, thank you very much for joining us. Obviously, the world tuned in today to watch the Pope's funeral, but in the backdrop of that, obviously, two very important men, President Trump and President Zelensky. This photo was taken of this amazing background inside St. Peter's Basilica. Do you have hope for that meeting after President Zelensky's statements that what they discussed was historic?
We all hope so, and I really think this is important to somehow recover from the previous meeting in the Oval Office. The two men in the majestic Basilica San Pietro sitting together alone for 15 minutes and talking in a kind of a friendly, understandable, serious way, and then walking into the hall and Zelensky being greeted by the entire audience of hundreds of heads of states, where Russians don't exist in that. They are neither Lavrov nor Putin. They cannot fly to Rome for the fear to be arrested at the airport. So it's really a significant victory for Zelensky today. The meeting with Trump, the discussion of something they already proposed 45 days ago, the full and unconditional ceasefire, was both Zelensky and Trump proposal to Moscow 45 days ago. And Moscow is delaying, is finding excuses, and is not making any progress. In coordination also with the European leaders, we see another photo of Macron, Starmer, Zelensky, and Trump, which is also significant because these are big powers, Britain and France. And they talk the same voice, which is very, very important. It's kind of a synchronic messages coming from Paris, London, and Kyiv, and most of the rest of the Europe, including Canada. So today, I think by the way, it was not known until the last minute that Zelensky will attend the funeral. And it was really one of the best decisions of the Ukrainian president to attend, to talk about full and unconditional ceasefire, during that ceasefire, when it happens, all the other issues of territorial disputes, of exchange of prisoners of war, of who is going to guarantee the security of Ukraine in the future, what will happen with the sanctions on Russia, those issues will come later. But first and foremost, full and unconditional ceasefire. And I'm sure Donald Trump will take this because he promised that. He is desperate to report to his own audience and to the world that he achieved something.
Dr. Papovsky, I now wanted to move on to the other side and talk about the US envoy Witkoff's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Now, there's this striking image of Witkoff the former real estate mogul, sat on his own with the entire Russian delegation opposite him in this meeting in Moscow. What does that say about the negotiations that are going on? Obviously, we saw Trump also be vocal. The famous Vladimir Stop Putin Truth Social tweet after this missile struck Kyiv and killed 9 people there. What does this say now about Russian and United States relations?
Certainly, we expect the US administration to exercise pressure on Putin, and because Putin continues the war, he's killing civilians and children almost daily, if not weekly, and that should stop, and the message by Donald Trump was clear. I don't expect much from Steve Witkoff. It is already 4 meetings in Moscow, and he's going there, and he's sitting for hours and hours, but we haven't seen much progress out of that. So there is a plan which United States proposed, but also a plan which the Europeans proposed. There are 2 peace plans. They are quite different because the United States already jumps into discussion of territorial issues, of de jure or de facto recognition of certain part of the occupied territories as Russian. The issues of Crimea, which the US president and his administration wants to declare to be de jure Russians, and the rest, the 4 regions in Ukraine to be de facto Russians. Again, yes. Those are playing with some words. They're not serious, because what does it mean, de facto recognition? Everybody recognizes that the Russians are occupying certain part of Ukraine. Nobody can deny that, but de facto recognition in fact doesn't exist. It is what de jure, what legally will happen. And apart from United States, no other country in the world, including China and Turkey, do not recognize Crimea as Russian. So yes. Even if the United States does this, it doesn't mean much.
Yes. Professor Dr. Veselin Ivanov Papovsky, thank you very much for being on the program. We now move over to the Middle East, where President Donald Trump has opened a new chapter in US-Iran diplomacy as top negotiators from both sides started the 3rd round of indirect nuclear talks this weekend in Muscat, Oman. The discussions, mediated by Omani officials, follow a 2nd round of constructive expert-level talks in Rome last week. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and Trump's Middle East envoy Steve Weisner are spearheading efforts to craft a framework deal that could curb Iran's nuclear program. The goal is to prevent Tehran from obtaining a nuclear bomb without triggering a new conflict in the region. Despite some progress, negotiators remain far apart on some key issues. Iran is demanding a full lifting of sanctions, while the US wants Iran to halt uranium enrichment and dismantle parts of its nuclear infrastructure. Tensions sparked further today with reports of a massive explosion at Iran's Shahid Raji port, injuring hundreds just hours after talks resumed. Meanwhile, President Trump, in an interview with Time magazine, reiterated that military action remains on the table if talks fail, but added he would prefer reaching a deal over talking military steps. Talks could extend beyond today if needed, and the two sides dig into technical details. This comes amid new US sanctions and heightened scrutiny over Iran's nuclear sites, with United Nations nuclear watchdog pressing Tehran for more transparency. Iran maintains its right to enrich uranium is non-negotiable, raising questions over whether a final deal can be reached before key deadlines later this year. We are joined by Berzine Wagmar, Centre for Iranian Studies, SOAS, located in London. Thank you very much for joining us, Berzine. Your analysis today, obviously these are the 3rd round of talks, the first being in Oman, the 2nd in Rome, the 3rd back in Muscat. How do you think these talks are going? Donald Trump has expressed full confidence at his ability to get Iran to stop their nuclear development?
Well, I doubt anything can be achieved with these talks. What will be achieved from the Iranian side is procrastination and perfidy and chicanery, which has been a part of their modus operandi all along, to drag out these talks and bid for time, since the snapback clause will come into effect by 18th October 2025, though Mr. Trump is committed to having something sorted in the next 2 months. The point is this: Iran is determined to continue nuclear enrichment and not give up its program, as it says, which Israel would want, and the US too, in a Libya-style manner. But there is more to it than just that. The Iranians are deliberating to keep it on a very narrow focus, the talks, by distracting the Americans and the West from their ballistic missile program, which is very disquieting, given that between 2015 and 2025, in the last decade, even when the JCPO came into existence in July 2015, if you recollect, Iran has test-fired 30 plus ballistic missiles capable of carrying a nuclear payload. To say nothing of the fact that it has also created insurrection and problems for all its neighbors in the region. And even though these issues have somewhat been mitigated because Iran is on the back foot now, since its prize jewels are down and out, like the Hezbollah as such, and Hamas, the point is it is still capable of creating problems for its GCC neighbors. The point is also this, that Iran is committed then to having either a revised JCPO, which they would ideally like to see, but then one must question the wisdom of that, or at the same time, it would want to have sanctions lifted. And that's another issue in itself, Thomas, because Witkoff's meetings in Moscow would have led Putin to prevail upon him, I fear, that there is deals to be made to the tune of $1 trillion and that sort of nonsense, which one has been hearing in the media, including put out by Iran apologists in the West. And that is necessarily mammon, which is music to Mr. Trump's ears, the man who claims to have the art of the deal and all that. But then that would lead to several issues which will not be resolved if Iran continues, and indeed it has put in the 9 yards of hard work for uranium enrichment. U-235 enrichment has already taken place to the tune of 60%, and 90% of the homework has already been done for transforming natural uranium into weapons-grade uranium.
Berzine, I wanted to address the other striking news coming out of the region today, the explosion that happened in Shahid Raji port that coincided with today's nuclear talks with Iran. Could this timing have any implications on the deal of this explosion?
No, but suffice to note that the port, which is located a few kilometers west of the city of Bandar Abbas on the southern littoral of the Persian Gulf, is Iran's premier port, Rajai Port, which is also part of the north-south corridor between Bombay and St. Petersburg, the INSTC, which of course has been moribund for the last 20 plus years, except for a few dry runs of freight. And it's the first port of call if you leave Bombay for Bandar Abbas and onwards overland through Iran to reach St. Petersburg. It's also Iran's premier port and bunking facility for oil shipments to China. So it is important for the Iranians, but one must see if this sabotage is due to an accident, as what happened in Beirut a few years ago, and not necessarily due to terrorism or any such thing. I would attribute it mostly likely to some unfortunate accident as such.
Berzine, Wagmar, thank you very much. Pleasure to have your insight on the programme. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from across the globe. Thank you very much.